Russian forces have carpeted Ukraine with a fresh barrage of missiles and munition-carrying drones Tuesday. The bombardment came a day after strikes across the country killed at least 19 people in what the UN Human Rights Office has described as particularly shocking attack that could amount to war crimes. Air raid warnings sounded throughout Ukraine in the morning and sent some residents back into shelters after months of relative calm in many cities. Meanwhile, at a news conference in Brussels Tuesday, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg said he believes Russia's latest attacks Monday show Russia is becoming desperate in its war with Ukraine.
Ukraine has the momentum and continues to make significant gains, while Russia is increasingly resorting to horrific and indiscriminate attacks on civilians and critical infrastructure.
Stoltenberg said NATO defense ministers meeting in Brussels this week would take stock in efforts to ramp up weapons and ammunition production and would take further decisions to preserve Allied stock levels that have been wound down by deliveries of material to support Ukraine in its war with Russia. Western leaders, meanwhile, in the group of 7 nations met virtually Tuesday to discuss a response to Monday's deadly missile attacks on Ukraine. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky addressed the leaders of the group of 7 during their meeting. The Ukrainian leader tweeted after a phone call earlier with U.S. President Joe Biden that air defense was his top priority, and he was looking to the U.S. and the G7 to take a tough stance on Russia. Russia's deputy foreign minister said Tuesday Russia will respond to the West's growing involvement in Ukraine, though he acknowledged direct conflict with NATO is not in Moscow's best interests. Iran Tuesday intensified its crackdown on protests stemming from the death of a 22-year-old woman who'd been detained by the morality police for failing to properly wear a hijab to cover her hair, with social media showing authorities sending tanks to the Kurdish region to quell unrest at the center of the demonstrations. Riot police fired into one neighborhood in Sandahai, the capital of Iran's Kurdistan province, 400 kilometers west of the Iranian capital, Tehran. A Kurdish group called the Henga Organization for Human Rights posted a video showing darkened streets with apparent gunfire going off and a bonfire burning. Protests continued elsewhere in Iran as well, with videos Monday in the capital, Tehran, showing some women and girls marching through the streets without headscarves. The protests against the death of Mahsa Amini, now in their 4th week, represent one of the biggest challenges to Iran's theocracy since the 2009 Green Movement protests. Some oil workers Monday joined the protests at 2 key refinery complexes for the first time, linking an industry that is key to the theocracy to the unrest. A week into her new job, U.S. Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson is speaking up more than usual for a new justice, showing that she meant it when she said she was ready to go to work. Associated Press correspondent Ben Thomas reports.
I thought Congress's statute said we don't care about intent.
In the opening cases of the High Court's term, Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson spoke almost 4,600 words over nearly 6 hours of arguments, about 50% more than any other justice. That according to Adam Feldman, creator of the Empirical SCOTUS blog. He says new justices typically sit back and take things in, but this was a different approach.
So the race-neutral nature of this goes to whether or not Alabama intended the result.
On Tuesday, in a case that could weaken the Voting Rights Act, Jackson was particularly vocal, speaking uninterrupted for more than 3.5 minutes at one point. Ben Thomas, Washington.
Once deadly Hurricane Julia, and now a tropical low-pressure system in the Pacific Ocean, is still drenching Guatemala and El Salvador with torrential rains after it reemerged in the Pacific following a pounding of Nicaragua. At least 28 people were reported dead as a direct or indirect result of the storm. Guatemala's Disaster Prevention Agency said 5 people died after a hillside collapsed on their house in Alta Verapaz province, burying them. And in Huehuetenango province near Mexico, 9 people died, including a soldier who was killed while performing rescue work. In El Salvador, rivers overflowed their banks, and the government declared a state of emergency and opened 80 storm shelters. Repeating our top news story, Russian forces have once again carpeted Ukraine with a fresh barrage of missiles and munition-carrying drones on Tuesday.
Hi, thank you for watching. I hope the videos are useful for you. Please subscribe to my channel using the button below.